Jesse Minter spoke for the first time as the Baltimore Ravens head coach at his first press conference, and his vision, it was refreshing.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Thursday afternoon edition of the show, a little special edition, Instant Reaction Live, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage here for you, and that plus more does include Instant Reactions. We're reacting to Jesse Minter's first press conference with the Baltimore Ravens. Thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, if somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And on today's show, we're going to be diving into Jesse Minter, his refreshing vision that he outlined for this Baltimore Ravens team in his press conference. There were no crazy, mic drop moments or anything like that, but I certainly appreciated his perspective early on here on what he believes this Ravens team can be, what his role is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. We'll also dive into some of the key details that Jesse Minter, he revealed, even in terms of that offensive and defensive coordinator search. I know a lot of people are on edge for, myself included. And then we'll also just dive into what's next for this team and a lot more there. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens, this is the Reaction Edition, is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So we're reacting to Jesse Minter here. His press conference. I know he's also scheduled to appear on Pat McAfee at some point today. Could be in 5 minutes, could be in 2 hours. I don't know when that's going to be. But if there's anything that does come up and if he goes on Pat McAfee during this live stream, you know, if you know what he says, be sure to put that in the chat. But if not, we'll react to it on tomorrow's show, which will be exciting. But we're going to do press conference stuff here right now. I thought that it was really refreshing, honestly. And again, I think when you have a head coach for 18 years, in one place, just anybody anywhere for 18 years, you know, the messaging becomes, I don't want to say stale. I feel like that's not the right word I want to use, but you get the same message in different forms, I feel like, over the course of 18 seasons. And sometimes that message hits really hard. Other times that message does become stale. I'll use that word in that context. And I think for John Harbaugh, you know, I think everybody, myself included in this conversation, got so used to a certain level of messaging from John Harbaugh, a certain way of talking about this team and talking about things. And, you know, it's just different with Jesse Minter, right? Where, again, he's not the type of rah-rah guy, I feel like, right? That to me is fine. I know that some people aren't necessarily happy with that. I don't necessarily care about that with Jesse Minter because I know that he cares. I know that, you know, from all accounts of everything that we've heard from current players of his, the former players of his, the people who have worked around him, he's someone that is really good at what he does, and he's focused on the right things. And that, to me, is a really big thing that a lot of people were excited to kind of hear about with Jesse Minter, first time wise, from the press conference aspect of things. So obviously, you know, Jesse Minter spent some time thanking everybody, a lot of people who were involved in the process of him getting this Ravens head coaching job, a lot of Chargers thanks and people who've been around him, family, et cetera, et cetera. But he was asked about the Ravens, and he said, quote, "We will create standards that match the goals we want to achieve. Our plan will be built on being at our best late in the season into the playoffs." That question was around, you know, part of the reason he is the head coach of this team is because the Ravens have had past failures in the postseason and not achieving what they want to achieve. And that's something that it's kind of been a theme, an early theme with Jesse Minter and some of the things that we've heard about him. We've talked to different people who have been around Jesse Minter, and this kind of just affirms all of that, where he's someone that is there. Every coach should be a results-based guy, right? I'm not saying that Minter wasn't that. No, this is some revelation. No, it's not. But obviously, with the Ravens, this is a team, and I think the Ravens and Chargers are in similar but different spots where both teams can compete for Super Bowls. But I think the Ravens are in a different spot where, their roster is built like Super Bowl or bust right now. And that's something that, Minter talked about with the roster. He was very impressed with it. And when he was going through the head coaching process and whatnot, that was a big thing that, he was looking up and down that roster. And yeah, probably helped a lot for him that the Ravens have the talent that they do. But he said, quote, "When people turn on our film, I want them to see a team that's well connected." He was very focused in this interview on really making the point that this is a group project essentially for Jesse Minter. And that's what it's been in Baltimore in different aspects over the last 18 years and under John Harbaugh. But one of the big things that I noticed from him is that and this is something we've talked about, and you can hear it from the players. He is such a player's coach. And that's something that coming in with John Harbaugh is different, where Harbaugh, he established that for himself over his 18 years, where he turned himself into that. But Jesse Minter, from day one here, he prioritizes his relationships with players. He talked about that with Lamar Jackson, how, he's looking forward to continuing to establish that relationship. And all across the board, talked glowingly about Kyle Hamilton, which we'll get to, and the rest of this defense, and made sure that, it was a question about Kyle Hamilton mostly, but he made sure to single out, hey, this defense, that's something he's excited to work about with the talent on this roster and the talent in this defense. So to me, that was something that stood out, because I do think that this has to be a collaborative group effort. And again, that's not some revelation. I'm not coming on here and saying it is. But when you have that mindset from day one, I think it makes things a lot easier. And I think there are differences from when John Harbaugh came into the Ravens versus when Jesse Minter did. I mean, obviously, there aren't as many strong personalities in the locker room as there were when John came in. Obviously, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, like those vets on the team. There are some strong personalities and some veterans, but I do think it's a different situation in a different locker room, which, yeah, I mean, every situation is going to be different. But I like the fact that there have already been so many glowing reviews about him as a player's guy, someone who really prioritizes the players, someone who really prioritizes the relationships with the players. So that's a big thing, where some coaches come in there and they're just like, you know what, we're working together. That's all cool. But yeah, that's what it's going to be. That's the relationship. Where everybody in that organization, when everybody has a strong relationship and it goes beyond the football field, I always say, and I've said this for years, especially with all the drama the Ravens have had over the last 2 years, it's about what's off the field as well. If your off the field situation isn't good, your on the field situation is not going to be good either. And I'm really excited for Minter to come in and kind of establish that as well. Now, one of the things he did talk about with Lamar Jackson, and he answered the question about, what his thoughts were with Lamar, and he talked about it with Garrett Downing earlier in the day, called Lamar the best player in the NFL, which, good job, Jesse Minter. But he said, quote, "Lamar and I have had multiple conversations. It's been great to get to know him. I look forward to connecting with him, creating a team identity that allows him to thrive, which he's already proven to be the best player in the NFL." And again, this is about elevation, right? This team was not a 3-win team or a 5-win team. This is a team that every year, I mean, last year was a little different, but I mean, every year, for the most part, has been in contention to win a Super Bowl. And by that, I mean at least competitive enough to do that. I know, there have been years where it hasn't worked out that way, or they've lost in the playoffs early, but the roster has been good enough, and the expectations have been that of Super Bowl or bust. It's not like this team all of a sudden with Jesse Minter, they're now going to win 9 games, and that's going to be such an improvement. No. I mean, yeah, 9 games technically will be an improvement over last season, which kind of is sad to think about. But the standard of this team over the last handful of seasons and in the John Harbaugh era has been, you're going to have a great regular season, get to the playoffs, and hopefully win the thing. And with Lamar, obviously, it didn't work out with him and Harbaugh as a pairing. But it's not about Lamar and Jesse Minter coming in like Harbaugh, like Lamar gets Harbaugh his rookie year, and it's about continuing to elevate him from where he was his rookie season. This is about trying to elevate a 2-time MVP, should be 3-time, but we're not going to get into that, but elevating a 2-time MVP who was playing really good football before his injury. It wasn't a great year for him for a lot of different reasons, obviously injuries being a main factor in that, but it's about getting the best out of Lamar. And the thing that, again, stands out to me here, it's the team, creating a team identity. There are obviously individuals within that team, but I just think it's such a refreshing mindset here where, with John Harbaugh, there was a way that he did things. There was a way he answered questions. There was a way that his mindset was. And again, I'm not saying that John Harbaugh wasn't a player's guy or didn't care about his players, et cetera, et cetera. I think that'd be, that's not true. But I do think that the emphasis on team is something that I wanted to hear. That was one of the big things that I wanted the message to be from Jesse Minter, is that, yeah, you know what? There are great players on this team, but it is a total team effort. So I'm excited for that part of it as well. He seems very excited to work with Lamar Jackson. He also had some comments on Kyle Hamilton saying, quote, "Kyle is a weapon. Could not be more thrilled to be able to work with Kyle. I've had a couple of really good conversations with him already." And, the big comp, obviously, is he worked with Derwin James in Los Angeles. So obviously Kyle Hamilton, who is a better version of Derwin James. But Derwin James, he was the guy at that position for a while. And, Derwin was someone that had kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit before Jesse got in there. All the conversations were about how he was kind of falling off. And then Jesse came in there and revitalized his career. And so imagine what he can do for a guy in Kyle Hamilton, who was playing incredible football, is, in my opinion, the best safety and one of the best defensive players in this league. I mean, that's something really cool to think about. So that part of it was important because the messaging, I mean, again, there weren't any crazy things that were said by him. There weren't any like, oh, we're going to be the best. We're going to win all these Super Bowls and all this. But again, he said the standard is excellence, essentially, is what his thing was, where he essentially said it without saying it, right? That's the thing. He said it without saying it. And I think, to me, that's the biggest part that I can take away from this. And another big thing, you got to be able to not only connect with the players, but be able to teach them as well. And that's one of the big things about Jesse, and something that he prides himself on too, right? It's teaching these guys, getting the best out of these guys. But in order to do that, there has to be a plan. And Jesse did express a lot of confidence in that, and express a lot of confidence in himself to be able to put these guys in the best positions, and express a lot of hope as well. I think the hope part of this is really big because, again, I mean, if you had told me I would be feeling this way about this team directly after the Ravens lost to Pittsburgh, I would have been like, okay, yeah, sure. Because I wasn't sure the Ravens were even going to make the move to fire Harbaugh in the first place. And then obviously I had confidence in them that they were going to get the head coaching hire right and they were going to do it the right way, which they did. But it's instilled so much confidence in me to get a guy in here like Jesse Minter, who I truly do believe has an opportunity, if everything goes right, to be the next John Harbaugh for this team in terms of longevity. And hopefully that would bring more than one Super Bowl. And again, it's an incredible accomplishment that John won that Super Bowl early. John won a lot early in his career, especially in the postseason. But of course, the reason Jesse is here now is because that winning in the postseason did end up falling off over the course of Harbaugh's career after that Super Bowl. And so now the expectation is to get back to that winning in the postseason. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll continue diving into what Jesse Minter had to say, a lot of other things that I found very interesting, including the turnout that he had at his press conference from current and former Ravens players. So be sure to stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way here on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app. It helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Now, I was shocked when Rocket Money showed me I was paying for a lot of subscriptions I had completely forgotten about, and it's already saved me money, and I love how it tracks all my subscriptions. It lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And the show is brought to you by TurboTax. And tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert, just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this instant reaction edition on Thursday afternoon as we're diving into everything Jesse Minter. First, press conference related. He officially has spoken as the Baltimore Ravens head coach. And again, I just thought it was a very refreshing view on everything. So thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Or maybe your second listen if you've already listened to this morning's episode of Locked On Ravens. We had Ingraven Vids on the show. He was awesome. We've had him on the show before, and we talked a lot about the Ravens offensive coordinator search and a lot of other Ravens things. So after this, be sure to check out that with Ingraven. We have 5 days a week plus more, again, at daily Ravens coverage and content, and we have bonus episodes on the weekend as well. We have instant reaction shows like this after pieces of big breaking news and after games during the year. We got watch-alongs during the season for games. And, of course, Locked On Ravens Squad Show twice a week. Myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. That's Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And the Everydayer Club as well, if you want some extra add-on content, weekly Q&As. You got one-on-one text conversations with me. You can check that out as well on the Locked On website, as well as in the description down below. Plus, obviously, our regular programming is Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, other stuff with Jesse Minter. Before we get into it, let's do a confidence level boost here, or I guess a check-in, a confidence level check-in. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the direction of this team under Jesse Minter after hearing him speak at the Ravens press conference, or his opening press conference? If you're with us live in the chat, be sure to put it in the chat. If you're in the comments with us on YouTube after the fact, put it there as well. And if you're listening in audio form, be sure you can message it to me on social media, or you can actually, I think you can comment on some of those platforms. Be sure to comment it there as well. I mean, I really think that, I'm at like a 9 right now. It would be a 10 if we knew who the coordinators were. And I think they're gonna, I'm hoping they're gonna get those right. Feels like those could be coming out in the pipeline pretty soon. I see 7, 10, 7.8. We got another 10. We got 9. And I think Steve put the salute emoji as his ranking, maybe. Steve, appreciate you checking in. Steve, for those that don't know, is Tyler Loop's dad. So Steve always showing some support. We got a lot of people who support the show on the daily. I see a lot of people in here. Laura, Z-Mower. We got Carlos, Kwame in here. Howard, Laura, Z-Mower. So we got a lot of different people that are checking in daily with us and all the time on Locked On Ravens. But, yeah, I mean, look, I think that anywhere from a 7 to 10, I'm with you on that. Now, it can vary based off of how you feel about the coordinator search or the roster decisions, because, again, it's not all about Jesse. Like Jesse said, it is a team thing. It's a team effort. And I see, Cammie here saying 7, can't give it higher until we know the full staff. 100%. I definitely feel that, because that's a really important part. The offensive coordinator search is a really big part of this thing. But one of the things that Jesse Minter did indicate from the press conference, and he actually literally said it, didn't even indicate it, he said it, was that when he was asked directly about the Ravens coordinator searches, he said, quote, both of those searches are going really well. They're very far along, I would say. I'm looking for leaders and connectors and relationship builders and schematic experts. But most importantly, guys that the players believe in. I loved this. I loved this answer, because I think a lot of people, and I fall into this trap too. I'm not going to lie to you. I fall into this trap too. Sometimes when you look at some of these candidates and the way that I feel like they'll fit and the way that people think that they'll fit, sometimes I box myself in to be like, okay, what's their scheme like? And only look at that. Or how are they with players? And only look at that. In reality, and I know this, I just sometimes box myself into it, is that all of these things are important. And the thing, again, that's the theme of the day here for Jesse Minter, being connected, this team being connected. And you know what? Look, I'll say it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would too. I'm sure if you're listening or watching, you might say it too. The Ravens weren't connected last year. It just didn't feel like it to me. And, maybe behind, obviously, I don't know what happened behind the scenes with that team last season, but it just didn't feel like they were as strong as they could be. And that's okay, because you know what? Sometimes it doesn't always work that way every single season. It doesn't. And I understand that. But it felt like, and again, without me knowing anything that happened inside the building, just you could tell from some body language and some other things that were going on. And look, losing doesn't help either. I know that's something that the saying is winning cures everything, but the other saying of, I guess it's the opposite of losing creates problems, I guess. I don't know what the saying is, but something along those lines. And I feel like with Jesse Minter, him coming in, just having a fresh perspective, a refreshing perspective on things, I think that will really help. And again, I don't think in Baltimore, like, it was so bad with John Harbaugh in his last season that, like, oh, everything is crashing and burning and everything's terrible and all this is all. I mean, no, of course the season was bad. It wasn't a great year for them last year. But I do think that, again, at some point when you have 18 years of the same message in different forms, and a lot of time it worked with John Harbaugh. I'm not saying that all of a sudden, like, oh, the message never worked for John Harbaugh in 18 years. Of course not. But when you start to have the same thing happen over and over again to you, and the same outcome continues to happen, I just think that at some point cracks do begin to show, and that's natural. It's not just the John Harbaugh thing too. That's happened a lot of different places. And how big those cracks were, I don't know. Again, what the relationships were like, I don't know. But I think with Jesse coming in, being able to identify that and pinpoint that, not just with himself, but having that as an important quality for his staff. Guys coming in and being like, you know what? Yeah, your schematics are awesome, but I can find a guy who has similar schematics and is a better player connector, right? That's something that I think is going to be really important throughout this process because, if there's a strained relationship within the organization, it might not be between Jesse and a player or the offensive coordinator and a player. But, those relationships, again, it's part of the team. And it's something we talked about with Harbaugh, where, like, not everybody's going to like everybody. That's just not the way teams work. It'd be perfect if it did. But, you want to have as best of organizational alignment as you can. And I feel like from what his answer was here with the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator spots, that's something he's really prioritizing, which I think is absolutely awesome. Now, one of the things Jesse Minter also did officially reveal, again, I've been operating under this assumption, but, good to hear it from Jesse Minter's mouth himself, is that he will officially be calling the Ravens defensive plays. He said, quote, I think that's a strength of mine. I think that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here. And he would be correct. That's one of the reasons he was sitting there. I think that's a really big thing. Jesse being able to come in, give his expertise, but he also expressed confidence. And this is the big part of it, because again, I think we've seen that some head coaches can get caught up in the play calling and kind of lose that, hey, I'm also the head coach of this team. Jesse made it a point to emphasize that he feels confident in his ability both to be the play caller and then to also do everything, all the head coach responsibilities. That was a really big factor to me as well of, you want to have him be able to call the plays, but you also want to go in there and be able to delegate properly to all his guys. And again, like, he's not going to be the delegator coach John Harbaugh was. He's going to call plays. John Harbaugh didn't do that. But there also are still the same responsibilities as head coach that John Harbaugh had. And he's going to have to balance all of that. And the fact that he made it a point to say, yeah, I understand that and I understand the responsibility, I think was a really big thing. But again, I think it honestly kind of would have been a waste to me if Jesse Minter had kind of given up his play calling duties, because that is one of the big allures with Jesse Minter, is his ability to have great game sense, to put his guys in the best positions as a defensive play caller. And now that he even has added responsibilities, I think he can take that teaching ability that he has and move that to multiple different sides of the football, not just defense, but offense, special teams as well. I think he is a very well-rounded guy, and you can kind of tell that throughout his answers. And, I'm excited for that aspect of everything as well. Now, something else that was mentioned, and we'll get more into what Eric DeCosta had to say about the process of the head coach and offensive and defensive coordinators in the final part of the show, but something that he wants his Ravens teams, or at least he described his former Ravens teams, I assume he's going to want his current Ravens team to be this way too: physical, tough, and together. So again, there it is again, together. It's refreshing to me to hear that. Everybody together. But you also have a lot of different things that he kind of indicated about the Ravens head coaching search itself, because, obviously when you're looking for a job like this and, you know that this is probably your time in the head coaching cycle, you probably at the start of it don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. And, jobs open up and close, I guess very quickly in this part. But He said, quote, when this job opened, this became the one for me. And we had heard multiple different reports about how other teams became aggressive and trying to get Jesse Minter into their building, the Raiders being one specifically with Tom Brady over there. But again, it seems like his heart was set on coming back to Baltimore, which in my opinion is really cool because, I mean, there's the connection, between him and the Ravens and him being there. But the fact that he also felt so strongly about that was awesome. And that's what you wanted to hear, right? That's what you wanted to hear. But he said, quote, in his opening statement, this is kind of what set the whole bar to me. It's kind of crazy. We're only getting to the second part of the show, but this is what I wanted to kind of wrap this second segment up with. He said, quote, now it's time to get to work. The we is important. I'm looking forward to empowering our players. We will create our own standards. We will work to be the best team in the National Football League. That if there was a mic drop statement, it came on his opening one, because I truly think that when you see the current and former players that were there and to hear that, I mean, just imagining, being a current player and hearing that, that's something that Todd Monken was very adamant about with Lamar Jackson when he first came in. Because remember, Lamar didn't have a lot of freedom with Greg Roman in that offense. He just didn't. And the fact that Lamar was able to kind of spread his wings under Todd Monken and feel empowered by Todd Monken, that was the thing, right? Give Lamar the keys. It helped elevate him. I think that this mindset is going to help elevate all the players and set a standard and a key standard. And that's something too, where it's like, if you don't meet that standard, all right, then that's probably not going to be. And that's something that DeCosta has done over the course of his general manager tenure. Is like, look, if it's not working, and you're out of here. So I'm excited for that, because I think that the Ravens, honestly, they needed some new standards in the building. I think that they did. And I think this will help push them, and this will help motivate them and play for a guy that, again, cares. He just genuinely cares. And I know that people will say, oh, okay, well, you got to do it on the football field. Yeah, you do, 100%. But again, it takes a lot. And off the football field is another very, very important part of that as well. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk a little bit about what DeCosta had to say about the head coach process, the offensive coordinator search as well, how involved Lamar Jackson and other players were in this head coaching search, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Indeed. And if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is, whether you want candidates to truly match what you're looking for. Trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach candidates faster and the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need, real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And the show is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast. Without the hassle, it puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Now, for me, I love seeing all the all-in prices up front because there are no surprise fees at checkout, and being able to see the view from the seat before buying made the decision really easy for me to buy tickets. I went to see the Nuggets and the Wizards game, and that was really cool. Plus, zone deal stood out. Choose a section. Gametime picks the seats, and you can save. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Moving along and rounding out the show here on Locked On Ravens, Assistant Reaction Edition. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, talking everything Jesse Minter in his opening press conference with the Ravens. Appreciate everybody again for being here. 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens content and coverage. And if you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan or wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way on Locked On Ravens. And plus, you can follow me on social media, CashRecord34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. All right, let's dive into this a little bit more. Now, I did actually mention we were going to talk about the current and former players that were at the press conference in attendance. And I think, again, it speaks a lot of volumes to the support that Jesse Minter already has inside the building. And obviously he already has relationships inside the building, being there for a handful of years. Jesse Rebeck outlining, there are a lot of former Ravens in the house: Nick Boyle, Jimmy Smith, Jermaine Lewis, Sam Cook, Maurice Kennedy, Ray Rice, Brian Hall, Femi Abedejo, Harry Swain, Torrey Smith, Kadri Ismail, shout out Q, Jamie Sharper among them. And if all is according to plan, we'll actually talk with Q on tomorrow's episode to get his perspective on how he felt Jesse Minter's first press conference went. But, you know, you see a lot of guys from that Super Bowl winning team, or guys who have won Super Bowls, both Super Bowl winning teams, if we're being honest. But, you know, guys like Q and Femi and Sam Cook and Jimmy Smith and all those guys, like, et cetera, obviously, you know, those are really, really quality players that, again, like, champions, man, like, they're champions. And that's really cool. A few others just said he missed Terrence West and Chris Carr as well. So again, the full list, I'll read it off again: Nick Boyle, Jimmy Smith, Jermaine Lewis, Sam Cook, Maurice Kennedy, Ray Rice, Brian Hall, Femi Abedejo, Harry Swain, Torrey Smith, Kadri Ismail, Jamie Sharper, Terrence West, Chris Carr. So there's the updated list there. A lot of current guys as well. You saw the guys like Travis Jones, Nick Moore, shout out to Nick as well, Justice Hill, yep, Teddy Buchanan, Bilal Kone. There were a lot of guys, and I'm trying to look at the picture. I can't even find the picture right now, but those were some of the few Ravens players, and a decent amount of players that were in attendance there as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, for me, I think it's really important to have that support. And, you know, whenever a new coach comes in, they always do in some way, shape, or form. But to see that support already there in the building was really, really cool. Now, Eric DeCosta also talked a little bit, as I mentioned, about the head coaching search for the Ravens. And he said that there were players that were involved in the search. And he was asked specifically about Lamar Jackson. He didn't necessarily name Lamar by name, but he said, quote, "We had a small group of players kind of split evenly on offense and defense. We had some guys on Zoom, some guys that were in person. They met with all of the finalists." And, you know, DeCosta kind of talked about how when they went through this process 18 years ago with John Harbaugh, Zoom, like, there was no Zoom. Like, you know, they had guys come in the building and do all this and that. But, you know, times have changed and it's different now. And, you know, it's cool. And I assume, you know, these players were not named by Eric DeCosta, but I assume that Lamar was a part of that process. Maybe Derrick Henry was a part of that process. Kyle Hamilton, you know, depending, you know, maybe Roquan, I don't know. But, like, small group. So I'm not expecting like 20 players here on each side of the ball, but, you know, the key leaders of the team, probably, I'm sure maybe Ronnie Stanley was involved in it. So yeah, I think that's probably the correct decision to do. And, you know, you want to have your players' voices heard, but at the same time, it's like, you know, Steve kind of said, their opinions matter, but, you know, the end of the day, the power is in Steve's hands in that process. Now, Eric DeCosta also mentioned the fact that even though the players were involved in the head coaching search and that process is over now, some players are still involved in the Ravens searches for coordinators and other hires. So that's interesting. And again, like, we've heard the reports of Lamar and Cliff Kingsbury and whatnot, the receivers in Cliff Kingsbury, like Diana Rossini and people reporting on that as well. But I think that for me, that's a really good thing. It's a good thing because you want it to be a collaborative effort, especially with your key players. Like, again, not every player has to be involved in that process. You know, that's not a thing that we, you know, has to happen. But at the end of the day, like, as Jesse Minter kind of said, and this is what the Ravens are embodying, like, they want it to be a collaborative effort. I think that's the best thing you can do for your football team. Because again, like, obviously everybody knows certain roles and who has more say in this and that and the other thing, but everybody does have a voice, and you want to have that voice being heard. So, you know, I'm curious to see again, and it kind of goes back to what Jesse said about the coordinator searches, which said that, you know, that they're far along in that process, which again, maybe we'll be live here again later today talking about the newest Ravens O coordinator or D coordinator, who knows. But I think that to me, I was impressed with Jesse Minter. Again, it wasn't all this like motivational talk that we got from John Harbaugh or any of that, but he had motivation in his own way. And he said a lot of motivational things in his own way, which, you know, that's what it's going to be now. You know, one of the things that Eric DeCosta also mentioned was the fact he indicated that he and Jesse Minter will be partners working together in reporting to Steve Bisciotti, which again is what we found out happened with John Harbaugh and, them working together. And DeCosta said, quote, "We won 2 Super Bowls that way. We've won a lot of games that way. And we believe in that system, working together, fighting together," which, I think is really cool. It's different than what some teams do. Every team does it differently. But, at the end of the day, I think that with Jesse and a young coach coming in year one, having that already established regarding, the order of operations and being a team, with Minter and DeCosta together, they've won 2 Super Bowls that way. Hopefully they can get a third. And DeCosta kind of said that he started to imagine Minter as the Ravens head coach, talking to him in his office during the final round of interviews, said he blew them away in person. But the initial interviews, obviously, most of them were over Zoom. So, that makes sense based off the current landscape and everything that's going on there. But, again, I think that Jesse Minter did a really good job here. I'd give him an A. That there wasn't anything super crazy about the press conference, but I think he said a lot without saying a lot, which I think speaks volumes about how this is going to go, where he's going to be that guy that's going to get the best out of everybody. And I'm excited for that. So I have for you today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to our instant reaction edition of the show. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have more on this Jesse Minter press conference, as well as the latest on the Ravens offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator searches. So be sure to stay tuned. Hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.